at the peak of my illness, I was on about 5 prescription meds. And I remember looking at all the bottles that I had, and I was like, I was still in my 20s. I said, something's not right. Like, I'm on more medication than my parents are on combined.
Today's guest is Guy Fasciana, owner of Everything Natural, a health food store based in Clark Summit, Pennsylvania. He's a husband, a father of 2, and someone who made a pretty bold shift, leaving his career as a pharmacist in 2023 to step fully into an established retail business. Guy's passion for guiding people through their healing journey is obvious as he shares his own personal story of naturally healing an autoimmune condition that doctors told him was incurable. This episode is sure to open your mind to what healing truly means. We hope you enjoy the conversation as much as we did. Sure. Thanks for coming in today. We don't always have an official starting, but if you want to just give listeners an overview of who you are and what you're doing, and then we'll dive in.
Sure. Yeah. So my name's Guy Fasciana. I'm a husband and a father of 2, and I used to work as a pharmacist. Now I own and operate with my wife the health food store in Clark Summit, Everything Natural.
Amazing.
I like that you started off with father and husband.
I know.
Yeah, interesting. That says a lot about you right there.
Yeah, when I think about priorities in life, work is work. And even though we have our passion in our business, my relationship with my wife and our children, really our family, is really the highest of the priorities.
So I want to know about where you started and how you ended up on Main Street in Clark Summit.
Yeah, it's a really interesting story. So there's really 2 main paths that kind of converged into one. And there's the business side and getting to be thinking about business. And then there's the health side, because, at one point I didn't know very much about natural medicine. And if you're going to, be running a health food store and be closely involved with the health food store, your main mission is to help the health of your community and the people around you. So it's very important to have a strong foundation in natural health. So there's really those 2 paths, the business and the health, kind of converged right around the same time we were going to be buying Everything Natural. So it was it's a really interesting story. So business wise, when I think about like where the first seed was planted in my mind about maybe owning a business someday or looking at other options, I can remember I was newly graduated, like 23, just came out of pharmacy school. And I had a couple of friends who I kind of think about them like older souls, so to speak. So they were, so I don't drink anymore, but when I did drink, in early 20s, I would usually have beer. But my friends were already on the stage. They were past beer. They were already on like sipping the scotch and having a cigar, right? So they were dragging me to so their fathers were local politicians or local business owners, and they would be dragging me to some dinners with their fathers and their fathers' friends. So I felt so out of place at these meetings and these dinners. Here I am, 23 years old, and I didn't have anything to talk about with business. I felt like I couldn't relate to anyone there. But the one thing I remember saying to myself was, if I'm going to be here and it's going to be a little bit awkward, I want to at least learn something or get something out of these meetings and these dinners. So I said, I'm going to ask good questions and I'm going to be a good listener. So I started asking a lot of questions and just, let people, when you ask the right questions, people like to talk and they like to open up. And, that's a skill in itself, as you know, in podcasting, right? So I can vividly remember talking to my friend's father about, he brought up the term passive income. I'd never heard of passive income before. It was a foreign word. I'm like, what's that all about? So he started talking about how he had, he owned his chief business, and then he also had an investment stake in some other local businesses. And he started talking to me and my buddies about how he didn't have to always be at work physically there to earn a living. He was able to have sources of income that were coming in, and he could be there, or maybe he wasn't there, or maybe he was handling things remotely. But when I think about as awkward as some of those dinners were, where I felt so out of place, and everyone's wearing suits and having cigars and there's puffs of smoke everywhere, and it just wasn't my scene at all.
Maybe not the healthiest environment.
Yeah.
No. But I could look back, and I think that's a common theme maybe we can dig into in this talk. I look back on these moments and these situations in my life where maybe they were very uncomfortable or a little bit scary, but there was a silver lining. So that was like the first seed that got planted in my mind about business and other opportunities, was that talk. He started talking about passive income, and that really got me thinking. So then, I started working as a pharmacist, right? So, it was long shifts. It was 12-hour days. You're standing on your feet. And there was at the time, this was like 2012, 2013, 2014. We didn't have lunch breaks and dinner breaks, which they do now, thankfully. But these were really grueling, grinding shifts. So I started to have a feeling from the work side and professional side of like, I don't know if this career is for me. Maybe I want to explore something else. So the next step was I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Mm.
And it's a really foundational book for entrepreneurship and investing. And it really, I would recommend it to any young investor or anyone interested in business because it's a really great way to get your mind to start thinking about things differently about investing. So then, I started buying investment properties. It was like about 2016. So investment in multifamily properties. And that was kind of like the next step then of like, hey, maybe if I have some income coming from investment properties, maybe I won't have to work full time someday. Didn't know where it would go, but it was like, maybe I can be a part-time pharmacist and not have to spend so many long shifts going on. And then from there, my wife, when we got married a few years later, she was on board and we started buying some more. And that was kind of like the springboard, from the business side of like thinking about going into business or buying a business or, and there's some interesting stories we can get into with that.
Doing that in your mid-20s is that's impressive.
It is
I mean,
impressive.
most people aren't thinking that level at that time.
Yeah, I think it was really, coming from a place of struggle and discomfort. I think a lot of times when we're uncomfortable or upset with something in our life, like I really wasn't happy with the career I was in, and I think if we really listen to that deep inside, we can use that as motivation rather than wallowing in like self pity or victimhood or whatever. We can use those uncomfortable feelings to say, hey, I don't want to feel this anymore. I want to take this feeling. I don't want to feel it. So I want to listen to it. Maybe it's telling me I'm not on the right path. Maybe I need to shift a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the driver there from, like I said, from the business side.
Can we back up for a little bit? So how long is pharmacy school?
So pharmacy school it used to be 5, then it became 6 years.
Okay. So you decided at some point, I want to be a pharmacist.
Yeah.
And then you went and spent 6 years studying that.
Yeah, actually, I was able to do it in 5, which was nice because I came out a little bit earlier. I had a lot of credits from like AP in high school and stuff, and took courses at Wilkes and when I was in high school. So that made it a little bit better that it wasn't as long of a commitment. But yeah, there was some pushback, from family members actually who were saying, hey, you have a great career, you make great money, you're young, you're in your 20s and it's going really well. Like, why do you want to rock the boat? Why do you want to go and buying investment property? Like, you're good. Like, you don't need to mess around. So there's definitely some pressure from friends and family in that regard.
Mm-hmm. But what made you want to get into it in the first place?
Well, it was one of those things where I actually didn't know what I wanted to do at the time. I knew I paid close attention to detail, and you have to as a pharmacist. Being a pharmacist is incredibly important to pay close attention to detail that, everything on the bottle is exactly right every time. And that what's in the bottle is exactly what's going, what should be going to the customer. So, but to be honest, I was also recruited to play basketball in college. So by a couple of different schools. And that was a big driving force too, is that the coach was like pushing, hey, you could check out pharmacy. We have a great pharmacy school. At the time, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I said, all right, well, it sounds good. Let me try it out. But it wasn't something I had like a passion from the beginning.
Gotcha.
And that's something I realized kind of partway through school too. It was like, I don't know. I don't know if this is totally right for me, but I didn't have anything else. And at the time, I didn't have the skills or the knowledge or, the perspective of, hey, maybe you could go into business someday, or maybe you could buy real estate, or I didn't have any of those things in my mind. So, but that became part of my journey.
I was just thinking about this when you're talking. It reminds me, I literally put this note in my phone to talk to somebody later today about this topic. And I probably stole it off a YouTube video I was watching this morning. But this person is frustrated that they're not seeing certain things happen in their life. And I'm coming in here, not just really as an advisor, but more of a friend too. And I was thinking about it this morning. I said, here's what I'm going to tell them. And I feel like you did this for yourself. Give me 3 things that would define success to you, and then go find people that are successful at those things right now. And then make a list of what they do how they think, what they do, habits they have, their activities, and then make a list of what you're doing today and see if any of the stuff they're doing is on your list. And it's the issue is that you're not willing to do today. You're not willing to do the things that those people are doing to get the same success, even though that's the success you want. So a lot of it's just changing your habits, just breaking out of those ruts and everything. I think that's amazing that in your 20s, I mean, might shock some of you to know this, but I was in my 20s at one point in time, and I didn't think that way so much. I mean, I thought about a lot of stuff. I don't remember having a clear, concise thought of like, I'm going to meaningfully change the direction here,
Yeah.
But for you to do that, that's really commendable.
It's really courageous
Yeah.
to change your
Yeah.
mind after
Mhm.
investing all that time and
Only because it
Yeah.
worked out.
yeah.
If you fell on your face, we'd be like, that was so
Yeah.
stupid.
No, there's always another
Well,
way.
there's a lot of scary moments in the journey for sure,
Yeah.
because then there's also the health side. So like I said, there was two things kind of going on at once. I had what I would call like disenchanted with the job and the career kind of feeling, but then I also had some health stuff pop up too, and that kind of really set me on a new path. So, part of being a pharmacist is dispensing medication, and like I said, you know, I started seeing patterns with my customers where they would be on medication and they had to stay on it in order to keep their symptoms down. Whereas if they stopped their medication or they tried to wean off, say their blood pressure would come back up or their blood sugar or their cholesterol or whatever. So I started seeing that, and I felt like a lot of my colleagues weren't noticing it or paying attention to that. I kind of thought that like going into it, pharmacy would not cure, but it would really take care of your problems completely. But it ended up being sort of band-aid. So I started seeing that and thinking, maybe there's some other things out there, but I don't really know what else could be out there. So right around that time, I started pondering that I actually developed a really serious autoimmune condition. This was in my mid-20s, where I had a lot of really bad gut inflammation and gut problems. At that time, I actually went on medication and it helped me and I was good. And I was good for a couple years. But then I started listening to different podcasts actually about like natural healing and health, because just out of curiosity. And I heard that people were going off their medication and they were doing it a natural way and they were able to get better. So that inspired me to want to take that journey and take the next step. So I went in a little brashly and before I was ready to do it. And I kind of went off my medicine and my symptoms, like many of my customers, came roaring back. And I was actually more sick than I ever was. So I had tried changing my diet a little bit and tried a couple supplements and different lifestyle things, but it wasn't cutting it. So I had to go back on medicine and go back to the drawing board. But that was really, the next step for me was like, okay, I have to figure this out. I want to get better. So I really dove in like head first all the way into natural medicine. I said, listen, I'm not going to give up in this. I really want to figure this out and try to, whether it's seeing different chiropractor or acupuncturist or meditation consultant or whoever it was. I saw a lot of different people. I read many, many self-help books, tried every diet, keto, partially vegan, gluten-free, every diet you could think of, I tried. And then after maybe 6 or 7 years, I was able to get to the other side where I was actually able to get off medicine completely. And I even think back, there was one moment where at the peak of my illness, I was on about 5 prescription meds. And I remember looking at all the bottles that I had, and I was like, I was still in my 20s. I said, something's not right. Like, I'm on more medication than my parents are on combined.
Right.
They're,
And you have your
you know-
whole life ahead. You're looking at, I have to be on this for 80 more years.
Exactly. And I said, something's just not right with this picture. It just didn't feel right. So that was like kind of like one of the wake up calls for me, like, hey, maybe there's another way. So then thankfully I was able to get there, and I worked with some great practitioners and, like I said, taught myself all sorts of stress reduction techniques and meditation and breath work, and you name it, I've pretty much done it. And, I was able to get to a point where I was able to be off medication and be symptom free long term to actually reach, what we would call real healing, healing where, in the traditional medicine side, they'll say, oh, well, you're just in remission. I don't like to look at it like that. I like to look at it like, no, I've reached true healing. And I don't look at it like, because when you look at something like remission, like it might come back. It's always there. It's always like right behind you, that thing
Yeah.
that might come and get you, it might come back at any time. But I don't even want to put that in my worldview.
Yeah.
Really. I want to look at it like, you know what? No, I'm living a normal life, eating good food and feeling good and feeling strong and energetic. And that part is behind me.
Mhm.
So that was kind of like like I said, there was these two things going on. That was the health side that really, was the launch pad for, all right, well, I know a little bit about business and real estate. I know a lot about natural healing. So when everything natural went for sale, it was like, it's just like the planets were all aligned. It was like the perfect
Wow.
opportunity.
It's pretty magical.
So can you, so as a pharmacist in your traditional role that you were in for a
Mhm.
period of time, does anyone ever come into the pharmacy and say, "Oh, thank you so much, you changed my life"? Or they just come in and say, "I'm here for my pills"?
I mean, you don't get a lot of it. Some people
Right.
call it a thankless job
Yeah.
because it's,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't get a lot of that.
But, like,
Yeah,
in
or
your role now, I I would imagine you're getting some testimonials and
yeah.
gratitude back that you never had in the other role.
Yeah, because I actually get the time. I really desperately wanted the time in the pharmacy world to be able to sit down with people and talk about their health. Either they didn't have the time or I didn't have the time because you had soft quotas they expected you to meet in terms of how many prescriptions you filled per day and all sorts of crazy things that basically prevented you from giving your customers the care that they deserve. Whereas now, being, the business owner and having, command of my time and how I spend it and what I do, I can spend an hour with a customer if I want. And we actually have a little sitting area that I do consults with. So I do free consults for our customers just to go over their health and see how I can maybe help in any way that I can. And for sure, to that point, I've definitely seen a lot of great testimonies, but also just great connections with people. Really helping people on a deeper level, letting people even sometimes it's just letting people feel really heard and understood with what's going
We
on.
just talked
We were
about
just
this.
talking
Yeah.
about
It's
this.
a great
Well,
point.
when you go to the doctor, even now, right? Like when I remember when I was little, we went to an independent pediatrician and an independent doctor when I was a little bit older, where he wasn't part of a big health service and he was able to spend as much time with you as he wanted. Whereas now it's like 15 minutes. You got 15 minutes, whatever you have to say with your doctor, like that's all you have because it's just the way the system is, with all these health systems owning the family practices, you really have a limited time and a limited ability to go over these things with your doctor. So if you really have like a deep issue that you want to work through, you a lot of times don't have the
Yeah.
time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you're coming at this health perspective from the pharmacy angle and the organic, natural, holistic health perspective.
Yeah. And it's really a blessing to have experience in both worlds
Mhm.
because I do have situations where maybe certain herbs may interact with medications that we go over. And even sometimes people come into me and they just want to talk about their medicine too. And I do talk about that as well. Now I'm of the mindset of, like I said, I had this really life-changing experience where prior to pharmacy school, I didn't think people could get off their medicine. I thought that this once you go on it, you're mostly on it for life because you need it. So for me to get off medication and then not need it anymore inspires me to want to help other people do the same. Now, I don't ever, push people with anything like that. That's got to be their own decision. And if they want to, I can suggest, other treatments and herbs that may help assist them in their journey. But it's one of those, it's really a blessing. And like I said in the beginning, there's kind of like this theme in my life of some of the hardest situations or the most uncomfortable or the scariest were actually the biggest blessings. They turn out to be the biggest blessings.
Absolutely.
Guy, do you get pushback from the physicians?
Um,
Or do you find that some of them or
hmm.
many of them actually enjoy working, collaborating with you at all?
Well, I don't have too much contact with them now. I will say we have a couple customers who are physicians actually of the store, local
Okay.
local physicians who have, I've actually been able to talk with at length. And I've been finding that some physicians are actually they have some curiosity now about other solutions. I think that's a trend that we're seeing, like a meta trend, is
Yeah.
that people are looking outside the box now for more holistic and natural remedies
Mhm.
because we've seen an explosion of chronic illness in this country. We really have. I mean, we have 1 in 2 children now with a chronic disease, which is, usually when you think of who's the healthiest cohort of your society, it's young children, right? So I think people are finally starting to realize, even if you look back at my life, I didn't have anybody with autoimmune disease in my parents or grandparents or in my ancestry. So I was the first generation to have somebody with an autoimmune illness. And even that right there, you could say it's just chance or coincidence or whatever. But when you start talking to other people and you see the same thing, whether it's with eczema or even just allergies or food allergies or all sorts of illnesses, we're seeing a massive rise. So I am seeing some more open-mindedness. Now I will say a lot of the people that come into Everything Natural are a little more holistic minded. So maybe some of the
Sure.
doctors that are coming in are kind of like already interested into that. But I feel like it's a real trend that we're seeing.
Mhm.
I agree with you. I don't spend my days in a place like that, but I can tell you that there's a lot of conversations we have.
Yeah.
My wife is the I shouldn't say the pusher, but she's the pusher of
Yeah.
that information in our house. Yeah,
Yeah.
and podcasts can be great.
Mhm.
They can also be wrong. You have to be careful of where you're getting it. I'm sure a large part of your day is spent vetting and understanding
Hmm.
all the reasoning behind this or that, and then fitting it to what that person wants. Like, so I find it interesting that actually, this is a great question to ask you. I think walk me through like what's a typical ailment or condition that maybe somebody would walk in to your store and how that would transpire? Would they book an appointment with you ahead of time or they just walk in and start chatting with you?
Yeah, it could be both. I'm there on the floor most days of the week. So when people come in, our staff will a lot of times greet them first or talk to them, or if I'm up there, I'll greet them and engage right away. And if somebody has questions or needs help finding something, or that's kind of could be the doorway to a conversation. And what I then try to do is just kind of ask questions. Like once we're engaged in a conversation, I just kind of want to get a feel for what's going on, really, to ask questions. How long have you been dealing with this? Because when you think about, when people develop a sudden condition, a lot of times there was something that happened right before. It could be something stressful in their life, or it could be a massive change in their diet, or something usually precedes. People usually aren't just like living their best life, waking up every morning, jumping out of bed, super happy, and then all of a sudden develop like MS or something, or anything really. There's usually something that's been going on, either like a chronic long-term stress or some acute moment that happened, or acute change in their life. So I like to ask questions to find out what's really going on, and then we kind of just dig in. So it could be we could just be standing there in the store talking. And then but for consults, I do, we have a little sitting area in our cafe where it's a nice little private area where we can talk about health. And I try to really just get to the bottom of what's going on, see what they've tried or what they haven't tried, and explore other options. I see myself and I see Everything Natural as a resource for people. We're a resource for people to help find, we have people that are healthy that don't need any, extra help. They already know what they're looking for and they know what they're coming to get. And we also have people that are on a health journey, like I was. Like even I can recall when I first got sick, I was going, the first thing you do is like, okay, well, where do I get good, clean food from? So I would be Googling at the time. I didn't know. This was like, 10 years ago or 12 years ago. I didn't know like where you can go to get organic food. And, so Everything Natural comes right up. So I could remember driving up to Clark Summit from West Pittston and spending a lot of time in the aisles, just looking through all the products and kind of taking out my phone then and reading a little bit about like, oh, what is that for? What does that help? So now I see people kind of doing the same. And I think about, Everything Natural played a big part of my journey with learning about and finding healthy foods, healthy supplements, healthy personal care items that are clean and free from all sorts of toxic materials. So I take a lot of pride and passion with helping people do the same because I know really what it feels like to be, you don't know what's going on, like what do I need to focus on? Who do I go to? So, whether it's helping people with selecting their food choices or, supplements, it could also be I'm also a connector of people. So
Mhm.
in the community, we really network a lot with local practitioners, whether it's acupuncturists or chiropractors or massage therapists or even physicians. We have a lot of community of naturopathic physicians, which are NDs, naturopathic doctors, and then we also have medical doctors and DOs who are great resources in the community. So when I'm talking to a customer, I might be thinking about, who might be a good fit for them to work with, because I don't really work with people beyond like interacting in the store. I consider myself to be their resource. You want to come up and see me, I'd be happy to make an appointment. But I don't really follow people like through emails and through like I'm not their practitioner, so to speak.
Mhm.
So I kind of offload that to somebody else if somebody may need that. Yeah.
I have a question. This is going deep. There was a belief shift for you, a subconscious belief that had to shift when you thought, okay, the medical industry heals people. And then you're like, well, maybe it doesn't heal always completely 100%. Maybe there are other ways. And then you had to shift your belief system over to a different idea that maybe you could heal yourself naturally. And then you, with more education, believed that you could, and ultimately you did. So your belief system went on a journey along with your physical body. Do you find that the customers that are coming in are in that in between mindset place of what I thought was true isn't and what else is out there? And, I'm guessing you're kind of a guide in that regard too.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say yes, for sure. Mindset plays a tremendous role with any type of transformation that you want to go through, whether it could be career transformation or health transformation. Your mindset and, to your point, your subconscious beliefs. Like if you don't even hold the space in your mind for, I can get better from reducing my stress, or I can get better from changing my diet, or I can get better from X, Y, and Z. If you don't even hold space for that in your mind, it's hard for that event or that happening to take place in your life. So yeah, I would say that I do play a role with helping people to inspire people too, to inspire people. Like, because a lot of times we all like to see examples of these things, right? You can read about it, you can hear about it, but like, I'm blessed with having the opportunity of and the experience of now I'm on the other side,
Mhm.
so I can share what I went through as inspiration for other people. And it doesn't mean that every moment of my life is rosy. I still have to do a lot of things to maintain my health, and I have a lot of regimens and things I do. I'm very strict with my diet and different things, but it's really a blessing to have that experience because now I can share it with others. And I would say that. Really helping people shift their mindset is a critical piece. Is a
I
critical
think so.
piece. Yeah.
Mhm. I think that's a big one.
I wanted to ask you about procuring the inventory that you have on your shelves. Um, that has to be a challenge these days. And I'll s- I'll share a story I had the other day. I had a guy who's running a peptide.
Mm.
He's selling peptides
Mhm.
out of his apartment, and he was pridefully telling me that I think it was PayPal or somebody like discontinued. He had to do a runaround and figure out how to accept credit cards because PayPal wouldn't let him do it. And I said, why
Mm.
wouldn't they? He said because peptides are unregulated or whatever. I don't even know the details, but I was like, okay, there might be a reason for that. And he said, well, I figured a workaround. And I was like, well, so you're still going to sell them? He's like, oh yeah, people want these things. And I was like, where are you getting them from? He's like, wherever I can. Point of the story is I hung up that call and I thought to myself, I'm not taking peptides or anything, but I thought to myself, like all like the whey protein and different like supplements I've purchased. And I know because my wife's into the podcast so much, I know there's a lot of clean sources to find that.
Mhm.
And then there's just a lot of junk out there. How do you sort through that to figure out? I mean, that's got to be a huge part of what you
Yeah.
do for your customers.
Yeah, it's a good point because it was either the New York State Attorney General's office or Connecticut. One of the northeastern states did a study like 10 years ago where they went into Walgreens, CVS, and Rite Aid. They pulled random bottles off the shelf. They like supplement bottles. They took them into the lab and studied them to see if what they say is on the bottle was really in there. So the bottle may say 500 milligrams of niacin. They take it to the lab, they look and they see, and there's only 5 milligrams, or there's 5,000 milligrams, or there's none at all. There was incredible variation they found from traditional mainstream supplement companies in the quality, the purity, the potency of the products that were there. So I remember reading about that and being like, wow, that was another thing.
Terrifying.
It was another thing that went through my mind with because I started learning about that as I was working as a pharmacist. And then because I would occasionally recommend supplements, not that often, but I would occasionally recommend them as a pharmacist. And I started thinking, man, oh no, if I can't recommend any of the bottles on the shelf here, like, what am I going to do? Like, what do I have to tell people? Don't buy our products, buy something else. Like I felt, there was a conflict of interest
Yeah.
there. So that was another piece of like, when we got to everything natural, wow, we have really, really high quality supplement companies. Like for example, one brand that we carry is the number one brand that we carry called Natural Factors. They have a company called Ishura that goes in and third party tests the supplement for purity and potency. So you know exactly what they say is on the label is really in the bottle. and they test it for contaminants and toxins and
Mm.
things that may be, negative in the pills. But to your point, whether it's protein powders or whatever, I mean, it is kind of like the wild, wild west. So that's why you need to vet the companies that you bring in. Like for me as a business owner, I'm always vetting the companies, talking before I bring a new brand in. I'm talking about them for their manufacturing processes. What kind of testing do they do? I'm really taking a deep dive before I even consider bringing that brand into the store uh, because I don't want to be in a situation where I was, confused or didn't know what to recommend to my customers when I was a pharmacist. I didn't want to have a situation where in the back of my mind, I might be wondering, oh, I don't know if that was right, or I don't know if they're really getting what the bottle says. I want to feel confident in it. So for me, that's one of the most important parts. And that kind of ties into the whole, like we're a steward of the health of the community at Everything Natural. So we really hold in the highest regard the health of our community and whatever we can do to serve our community. That's kind of like the ethos and the
Yeah.
guiding principles behind whenever we do something new or we think about bringing something on or bringing new products. Is this going to really serve the community? And really, we think about our mission statement is to elevate the health and wellness of our greater community. So those are all factors that tie in whenever we're making a decision. But to your point, even with food, I'm becoming very rigorous with vetting food companies, and
Yeah.
there's obviously so many. We carry thousands of products, so you can't vet every single one and every single brand. But for the most part, whether it's you know avoiding seed oils and certain snacks, or there's a whole variety of things. We're looking to bring the highest quality stuff in because people on their health journey, they want to put clean, healthy food that's going to make them strong and vibrant. They, whether it's somebody that's already healthy and wants to stay healthy, or somebody who's sick and really needs that healthy food to kind of, provide the vitality and the nutrition to help their body heal. I want to be a part of that in a positive way. And, a big piece is making sure that the products we carry are very clean.
Well, it'd be so demoralizing if you sat and got to know them and helped them on their journey and recommended the absolute right thing,
Yeah.
and they actually ingested something that's not that. I mean, that's a punch to the gut.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
this might be too generic of a question, but what doesn't make it into your store? Like what are the red flags that you say we're not going to allow things like this or that in?
Well, companies that don't do third party testing is one. Whenever I bring something new and I'm really big on like, okay, do you have testing on it? Do you test for heavy metals? Do you test for other contaminants? What can you show me the reports that you have? Can you produce them? Because a lot of people say, oh yeah, we have them, but like, can you actually email them to me? Can you send them to me? Do you actually have them?
I'll get that out to you tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, right. They just want to get the product in,
Yeah.
but that's a big one. And then I like another thing I like too is family owned companies. Moving away from companies that are owned by big multinational companies. So what's happening is even in the health spaces, big companies like Nestle and I'm not trying to throw shade on any company, I'm just throwing generic names out there, or Procter and Gamble or whoever, they're buying up some of these healthy food companies or healthy supplement companies. And what happens then when you get bought out by a big multinational company is everything could stay exactly the same. Perhaps the product stays just as good as it always was. The ingredients stay the same, the testing stays the same, and the quality is really the same. There's no change. But in some situations, when you get absorbed by the whale, you could find a situation where the product quality may move in a downward direction because big multinational companies, as opposed to private family owned businesses, they have obligation to their shareholders
Mhm.
to, above everything, to make profits. So when that becomes the guiding principle of the company, that's something that kind of tells me not 100% that I want to stay away from them because there are good brands still that are owned by big companies. So it's not that they're all bad. I think we could fall into, whether it's religion, politics, spirituality, whatever, food, we fall into a lot of like this or that, white and
Mhm.
black. I try to stay away from that and look at life like it's a spectrum because it really is. So I wouldn't say that all those situations are bad, but a percentage of them I do become suspect of. I do become suspect of, and particularly which company gobbles them up or buys them up, and what else is in their product lineup, that maybe doesn't mesh with this new product, and Because big companies are looking for synergies. They're looking ways to shave costs. It's just the natural, it's just the state
Mhm.
of the business. Wherever they could save a little money, they want to do it because that will yield better returns for their shareholders. So I would say, third party testing, and particularly with companies that are family owned or owned by smaller businesses or privately owned. Those are just a couple things I look at with, before I'm ready to bring a brand in.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. I'm thinking
Yeah.
about people who are maybe on this journey and they're doing all their own research and they're watching these podcasts and reels and reading books, and there's so much information out into the world. And if it's your health, you almost don't have time or money to experiment on different things that may or may not work. So I think what you're doing is really beautiful, is taking your knowledge and experience and expertise and being available to people to kind of shave time, like consolidate their funds into something that is going to benefit them.
Yeah, that's a big part. I look at it is like how can I help speed up this person on their health journey? Because for me, it took 7 or 8 years. Spent tens of thousands of dollars on
Sure.
all sorts of remedies and devices and supplements and different things that I didn't know whether or not they were going to work. So if I could help, shorten the length of the person's journey, maybe from 7 years to 3 years, or hopefully sooner, hopefully 6 months, and also help guide them to like which practitioner or which therapy might be better designed for them. I see that as a big part of the role that I'm in, to
Mhm.
help them. Yeah.
I think
Can you
it's
give
really
like an
important.
example of like testimonials probably are huge for you, right? And I imagine when someone comes in and says, "You've really helped me shorten my healing path." Give like an example of somebody you've helped, obviously anonymously, but like just an example of somebody's symptoms and now
Well,
they've
even
turned a corner.
even there's been a lot. I mean, there's all sorts of situations, right? Arthritis is a big one, helping people with, debilitating arthritis. That we have a lot of great anti-inflammatory herbs that work really well for arthritis. But one of them that I think has been really consistent is helping people with blood pressure, high blood pressure. It's, first thing you do when you go to the doctor is they check it. And if you have 2 times of having high blood pressure consecutively, they start you on, most situations, will start you on medication. But what a lot of people don't realize is that you could lower blood pressure by 10 or more points just from eating a high potassium diet. Like, I didn't learn that in school.
Mm,
Most doctors haven't learned that in school. And it's not throwing shade on anyone, on any career, not throwing shade on pharmacists or doctors or anyone. It's just we haven't learned these things. And didn't even learn it until, I was 6 years into my health journey. Like, oh wow, potassium. Didn't even know about that. Potassium kind of counters sodium. So, sodium is known to raise blood pressure. Potassium is going to lower blood pressure. So I could think of, a few people that were able to, again, on their own path and their own journey, they went on a high potassium diet, went on some herbs that helped with blood pressure, and they were able to move away from the traditional medical paradigm a little bit. And it was really, for them, it was really eye opening. And that's the beauty of a lot of this is like once your eyes get opened on this, like for me, it was once I got off medication and my worldview expanded and I thought, wow, there's so much more out there I didn't even know about. I had no idea you can get better through natural remedies. But the beauty of that then is it spills over to other things. So then I then started questioning other aspects of my life. Like, wow, well, maybe, I was a little arrogant coming out of pharmacy school thinking I knew everything. So smart. Yeah, we're the pharmacists. Yeah, we know how to get you better and everything. It was very humbling to know that, they say wisdom is kind of knowing what you don't know, really being able to say, like, there's a lot that you don't know and being able to say it and being able to understand it. But I would say, like, for me, the spillover to other aspects of my life, whether it was again religion or spirituality or politics or business or whatever it was, it's very nice to have your worldview expanded to look at things differently. And sometimes it takes like a tragedy or a near tragedy for that to happen. Like for me, it was, I was hospitalized multiple times in my 20s due to really, really serious GI problems, right? Part of what I do is I don't want people to have to go through that,
yeah.
and everyone's on their own journey too.
Mhm.
Everyone's their path is their path. And part of that path is learning to ride the wave, right? To be the captain of your ship. I think about life now, like you're in the ocean. You can't control the ocean. The waves are going to be the waves. The storm is going to be the storm. That's out of your control. But if you're on your ship, you're in control of your ship. And what you can do is become better at steering your ship and guiding your ship to calmer waters.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the mindset I want to help people with, in their own life too.
Yeah, knowing how your ship works, knowing every
Yeah.
crack, every
Yeah.
hole, every
Yeah.
detail about it. Yeah.
Get your ship together. I love it.
That's pretty good.
I use a lot of nautical references in our office, so that's
funny.
what can I talk to you about risk?
Yeah.
And your appetite for it? Like buying everything natural, that must have been a major move for you and stressful. And
Yeah.
how did you know it was the right,
Yeah.
like that's a risk I'm willing to take?
Well, it brings up a really good story because when we were investing in rental properties, I was probably, 26 or something, 28. And I already had two multifamilies. And at the time I didn't think of other opportunities. I was just thinking, okay, I want to get enough passive income, to be able to either, like I talked about earlier, to be able to either retire early or work part-time or have some flexibility on my life. So I had maybe two multifamilies at the time, smaller ones, and a golden opportunity landed in my lap. So I was driving by a home. It was basically a mansion that got converted into a multifamily place. And I happened to be driving by right when they were putting the for sale sign up. So I caught it like right away. And then on top of that, there was a problem with the listing where the listing wasn't showing right on Zillow and all these other places. So people couldn't search for it. So I had seen it. I knew right when it got listed. No one else really knew about it. And I went right in. So this was like a massive, massive place. So this was like a true mansion. And it also had a 7-car garage that was rented out in the back. And it was a really amazing opportunity. So I got into negotiations with the seller. It was a situation where the owners had passed away and the children inherited it, and they lived like in Washington or something. They wanted nothing to do with it. All they wanted to do was sell it, get rid of it, move on. And for a real estate investor, especially someone young and trying to build their portfolio, it was a golden opportunity. It really was like the golden opportunity, or at least I thought at the time. I built it up to be like it was this will never happen again. Which was a very limited worldview, which we could talk about. Looking at a world like it's from an abundance perspective or a scarcity perspective. I was still kind of in the scarcity mindset then, like, hey, So, anyways, I was negotiating. We got the price down really, really low, like absurdly low. And we're about to sign the contract. And long story short, I chickened out. Like I absolutely chickened out. It just felt like too big of a project to me. It was like this overwhelming thing. I never managed a building that big. And I just completely was overwhelmed with fear, and I let it take control of me, and I chickened out. And for years after, I beat myself up for what happened. And I didn't let it go. I wasn't good at letting it go and forgetting about it. And, every time I would drive through that development, I would be reminded of it. And it was like this thing. And then it turned into almost like a victimhood. Like, why did this happen to me? Like, why would I was so wrapped up in like, I need to get where I want to go. And that property was going to get me there. And like, wasn't a good state of mind that I was in.
Should have had some more potassium.
Wow.
I know, right? I probably had some high blood pressure. So anyways, I carried that with me for a while. That it was a regret, basically a regret.
Sure.
And I didn't know how that would fit into my life. Like I just didn't think like, oh, it's just this unfortunate story in a chapter of my life.
Yeah.
But so then fast forward to when everything natural was for sale and we decided to buy it. So it was one of those things where we had to act quick. We put an offer in. We talked about it. Me and my wife talked about it for like a day, put an offer in the next day, was accepted the next day. And It was like, we're off to the races. Right. And because it happened so fast, we didn't really have time to integrate and to like, really like, oh, what's going on here? Because I had managed a pharmacy. So I was a pharmacy manager. So I managed a pharmacy with a few employees, but I had never, ran a full business with, almost 20 employees. And, as we're taking the steps to, finish the purchase, I'm realizing, okay, my wife's not working because we just had our daughter. She was just born. So I have a newborn. I have a really great job that I'm going to have to leave. I have to sell my entire 401k, my retirement, to fund the purchase. So that was our down payment. I literally liquidated my 401k, paid the penalties and paid the taxes and paid everything.
Yeah.
So all that kind of hit me, and it was like February 2023, and I remember it was about a year, it was about 3 years ago, at this time, 3
Yeah.
years ago. And I just remember being, again, overwhelmed and completely terrified of, like, am I doing the right thing? And then me and Gabby we were talking about our past, and the story of this property that I missed out on got brought up, and it was like that wasn't a mistake. That was your learning lesson.
Yeah.
That was the lesson you had to go through
Prep.
to be ready to buy everything natural. Like, that was, if we didn't go through that, if I didn't have that, that negative experience of regret and, woe is me, maybe I wouldn't have had the courage to take that risk and to sell my 401k and to put it all on the line and to take this jump into, the unknown, because that's really what it was. It was like you leave the familiar and jump into the unknown. And it could be very, very, very scary. And at the time it really was. But I look back and it was the greatest thing we ever did. I mean, really, it was the best decision ever. And it's one of those things where you then look back at your life, instead of saying, I regret what happened to me years ago, you say, I'm thankful for that, because if that didn't
Yeah.
happen, maybe we would have chickened out with this purchase. Maybe it would have felt too overwhelming. So I think that's kind of like been an ongoing theme, and I try to carry that with me now moving forward, is, if I'm going through something uncomfortable or scary, or really puts me in a bad place, or I feel, I don't feel right about it, I try to look, maybe is there a silver lining in this that I just don't see yet? Maybe there's something I haven't discovered yet. Or maybe it really is a bad thing and I need to get out of it and move on. I don't know, but
How old are you, Guy?
37.
Oh, man, you kind of have like the wisdom of a 67.
I know. I love this.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, I have so many questions. So now, obviously, you're more shifted into the abundance mindset
Yeah.
from that perspective.
Mhm.
I love hearing that you and your wife were making this decision together. I think a lot of people don't always talk about, I mean, you do very much, but
I talk about my family.
you
too
talk
much.
about your wife all the time, for good reason. But you had someone to help you make these decisions, and you had someone to help support you in this very risky, scary,
Mhm.
fear-based spot. How does that play into it?
Well, there's a strength in having two people with complementary skill sets and personalities. There's a strength in that. We do bounce things off each other. Any like big decision that we make in the store, we talk about together. I run the day-to-day operations of managing and running the store. But like whenever we're deciding on new things or new paths or things we want to bring in or changes to the store, we make the decisions together. And like we kind of are a yin yang kind of thing where we balance each other very well. And I think that's nice, because if you have two people that are too similar, it could, if you're both too worried, then that's no good. And if you're both like, oh, everything's fine,
Let's
like,
go for it.
that's not great either necessarily. So it's good to have a little bit of both. And I think there's a real strength with us with doing that, for sure.
That's awesome.
Just for the record, so if you're in my office in front of me saying, I'm going to cash out my 401k and pay all the my textbook answer is like, boy, Guy, that's probably not a great decision. But you, in your story, from what you said, in the life you're telling us you've led, you literally burned the boats. You went in, you went to the island, you said, there's no way out, there's no plan B. We're going to do this, we're going to make it work. How much do you think that level of commitment led you to the success you're having today? Do you think that was a necessity? Do you think if I kind of, as they'd say, half-assed it, it wouldn't have been anything like it is today?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's in the beginning there was a thought of me having a foot in both, like, because I worked for Rite Aid. They wanted me to continue working part-time, to help out. And I was kind of considering that at first. I thought, well, maybe it'd be nice to have some steady income coming in while we figure out the business and learn. But after a little while, we thought, no, that's not going to work, because I want to go in all the way. I want to really dive in. I got to learn the business from the inside out, day-to-day operations. I have to learn every aspect of how everything works. There's a lot of, aspects to our store, whether it's, like I said, that we talk a lot about the health food part with the groceries and the supplements and the personal care, but we also have clothing, and we also have a gift shop and toys. So we sell a lot of things, and there was a lot of things I had to learn about. So, the combination of putting the money on the line with the 401k and liquidating that, and then deciding, telling my former boss that I was leaving 100%, I wasn't going to work anymore. I think that 100% played a big role with our success and being able to just to have the space in your mind to, because you can't have so many distractions and things going on at that point. Like, you need to focus and bear down. Like, okay, I need to really like I really need to dive in. I really
Mhm.
need to understand everything so that we can do this. So that became our life. We would talk about, at the end of the day, Gabby and I would talk about business. We'd talk about our store, and it wasn't like work. It was like fun. Like, we talk about it that we like it,
Yes.
which is really beautiful.
That's
Mhm.
really, yeah,
That's nice.
I guess because I do talk about my wife and my family and stuff, but that's I've had so many coffees with my wife talking about this, and then in the middle of a sentence, I'm like, "I'm so sorry, I'm so boring," and she's like, "No, I love to hear, I love to be that sounding board," and
Yeah.
having that's it's a privilege,
Yeah, for sure. And
super powerful.
she through my health journey got to see, my health transformation. And that, she also developed some passion for the health food system and the health food store and natural medicine too, because she got to see, she was with me, we were dating in the beginning when I first got sick, and she got to see the whole spectrum of like really bad health, a little bit better health, really bad health, and finally good health, like back to where I was before.
Yeah.
So for her, she got to see that, and it's been great. And we were even talking about it before we even knew about the possibility of buying the stores. Was years ago. Someone had asked her randomly, like, some kind of like, it wasn't a retreat, but it was some kind of athletic event that they were all partaking in. And they were asking everybody, like, what would you do if you had a dream job? Like, what would you choose? And she didn't know what to say. And she said, I would own a health food store. And it's kind of funny because that's what happened. That's what manifested. And that's
That's so
pretty
cool.
cool.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Serendipitous.
I know. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
You're meant to be doing this.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you learn about the business from the previous owners? Was there like a crossover period where you learned from him?
Yeah, so we're the third owner. So the Kaplans were the original founders of the business, and then they sold it to a man named Neil Prasad in 2016, 2017, and then we bought it in 2023. So Neil, yeah, he did help me a lot with learning everything that had to be learned, and digging into the operations and figuring things out. And then there was a period of time after where we, stayed in close contact, where, we would talk regularly. And even now it's funny because now he has another health food store, and we, in New Jersey, and we can kind of talk as like, about different strategies and different ideas together. Like, we
Years.
became good friends,
Yeah.
peers. Yeah, we became
Uh,
good friends too. So, and then I actually talked to Barry Kaplan, the original founder. I talked to him from time to time. He loves hearing updates, because really, when you think about it, when everything natural was started in 1985, so we just had our 40th anniversary last year, people didn't know anything about organic food or clean supplements. I mean, it was a different time. We didn't have to really, there wasn't as much of a pressing need for it. We were a healthier society. But he was such a visionary, really, to bring to bring this all into being. I mean, this wasn't here. There was no everything natural. There was no health food store. There was no place where you can get all your gluten-free food, your keto food, your carnivore food, your clean supplements, your organic produce. There wasn't anything like that. And there wasn't anything like that for miles and miles and miles. So when you think about, I view it as a big responsibility that we now carry with the store, that like, hey, somebody really founded this incredible, amazing resource for the community. And they were a visionary for their time, or they saw into the future. Really. They were future thinkers. They saw, things that no one else was seeing. So I think about that now too, is like, hey, I want to think about the next 10 years, the next 20 years. I want to set us up for success and set our community up for success, for what we need to thrive as a society in the future. So, their legacy lives on in us, and our mission is really just to build upon it. Because, like I said, it's been 40 years. I mean, if you think about how many businesses could even last for 40 years, I mean,
mhm.
there's statistics that say the average business lasts for like 6 months or something like that. So to last 40 years in the retail space of all places, right? Very
Yeah.
competitive space, is really a tribute to the energy and the drive that was founded in it. And like I said, that we continue to carry on. Yeah.
So, do you have anything new you've brought to the store that you're excited about?
Yeah, so 2025 was a big transformative year. So we replaced all of our refrigeration in the store. So we got brand new coolers and freezers, which was nice.
Sounds cheap.
It was so we had to cut a hole in the side of the. So that was the hardest part. Well, aside from the cost, was getting them in the building. So we could not figure out a way to get them in the building. So they actually had to blow a hole in the side of the building, lift them up on a giant lift, and bring them in. I mean, I have videos of it. It's pretty wild, actually. For me, I'm like, can't even believe that we were able to do this. But for them, it's like no problem. So getting them in the store was just it was like a crazy mission just to do that alone. And then once we got them in, it was great. It was beautiful. It really lifted the beauty of the store and the way the appearance is. And then, after we put that in, we pretty much did like a couple things right in a row where we one of our employees is an amazing Pilates instructor. So we'd always said that we felt that a health studio or a yoga studio or something health related would be a great blend to work in everything natural because we have a studio downstairs. So she had talked to us about wanting to go on her own, start her own business, and have a yoga Pilates studio downstairs in our store. So she did, and like it was off to the races. I mean, she really has been doing incredible.
Right.
It's been a great resource. There's a lot of classes. There's like almost, I think, 30 classes a week now we have going downstairs where people,
Wow.
come in the store and go downstairs. And it's called the Flow Space. It's a really awesome Pilates studio. So that meshes really well with our mission of helping raise the health and wellness of the community is having health fitness related studio. And then right after that, it was in October, we launched our grab and go. So when I think about, what do we need? What can we do to improve our business, but also serve the community? I'm always asking, what do people need? And then sometimes like they say, scratch your own itch. Like I think about what do I need? What am I looking for? Because maybe what I'm looking for and what I need is what other people are looking
Right.
for too. So I always think I'm busy. I have 2 young children. I'm running the business. Like I don't always have time to have fresh food ready. It'd be nice to have healthy grab and go food. There's one thing in our area and in many areas, there's not a lot of opportunities for healthy, quick, accessible food. There's no shortage of traditional fast food. You can go anywhere and find that, right? And I used to eat a lot of that, like before I was on my health journey. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for the people that do want something healthier that's quick, that you don't necessarily have to heat it up, but you could take it, you can eat quick, you can, go back to work or maybe grab it on your lunch break. There really isn't that. So we partnered with Rebecca Gillette from High Vibe Kitchen. So she's basically a gourmet chef who also specializes in the nutritional value of her foods. So what's so special about the foods that she has is, not only do they taste incredible, but they also have like a really deep thought process in the ingredients that go into it. So for example, even if we take something like the chicken salad sandwiches that we carry, right? That we carry chicken from local pasture raised chicken from Rocky Ridge Farms, which is like a half hour away. And when you think about chicken, right? So pasture raised is considered the highest level of quality of chicken because these are chicken that are raised on pasture, which means they're living their normal life, eating worms and grubs and out in the sunshine. And they're not confined in these really tight spaces where they're not happy and where they're struggling and they're suffering and a lot of times suffering, right?
Mhm.
So these are animals that live the good life and are fed natural healthy food. So some people say you are what you eat, but then if you take it to the next level, if you're eating animal products, you could say you are what you ate like
Yeah.
what the
Yeah,
chicken
right,
ate, like,
right.
right?
Yeah.
So if they're eating all this processed food that they're just feeding them, right? And this that
Mhm.
you don't know like what it was sprayed with or does it have chemicals on it, how is that affecting the chicken's health? And then you're
Mhm.
eating the chicken, how does that affect your health? We've kind of lost sight of that. So we want to bring things in that are very thoughtful and intentional. So like for the chicken, like I said, we exclusively use pasture raised chicken, or even for the breads, whether it's we offer gluten-free options or we offer regular wheat options, and we're only using organic products that, haven't been sprayed with synthetic pesticides and different ingredients. But like I was saying before, beyond that, she'll even be talking to me about, oh yeah, I threw beets in this because I was trying to get this kind of vitamin content into the meal or whatever. She's always like thinking about how to make it healthier, which is really awesome.
Yeah, nutrient dense. I think
Hmm.
we're nutrient deficient as a society. It's just not really in the food.
Yeah.
They were saying even like an apple now doesn't have
Yeah.
as many nutrients as an apple did.
Yeah, yeah, and that's kind of ties into the farming changes that we've had, where
Mhm.
that's why you're supposed to do proper.
Crop rotation.
Exactly right, because if you keep farming the same thing in the same spot, it's going to suck all the same nutrients out of the soil.
Mhm.
So then, like 10 years of doing that, all of a sudden that soil there is like basically deficient and
Dead.
empty and dead. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's a big problem.
Okay, silly question. You probably know the answer to this. What is the difference between pasture and cage free?
That's a good question. So cage. So there's the chicken world with eggs and chicken meat is kind of crazy it's like a maze trying to figure out where what's what. But organic, if you even start with just organic just means the food that they're given. It doesn't really say a lot about where they're spending their life. Cage free allows them to experience life outside to a degree, but they're not like living their life outside. Whereas pasture raised is primarily living their life on pasture, eating natural food, eating grubs,
Gotcha.
eating worms, spending. In the winter it's a little tough. In the winter, even pasture raised birds a lot of times they still have a coop that they'll come back to, but it's a bigger, more spacious coop. And I'm pretty sure there's rules with like how much space they have to have in that coop. Like I won't mention it, but there's a big brand of eggs that's sold in a lot of common grocery stores. And they did a study with those chickens. The chickens live their whole life in a square foot. So like this,
Yeah.
their entire life. So that means they're eating, they're going to the bathroom, all
Yeah.
in the same spot. And that's like really not a good situation
Right.
for the health of the bird, the health of the human. So that's why we try to incorporate, when you're searching for eggs or meat, pasture raised is always the best. It's more
It's
expensive,
interesting. I didn't
you
know
know,
that.
it's more expensive because
Well,
you
they're
can't
stacked
cram all
too.
those birds
They're
in.
stacked
Yeah.
on top
Yeah.
of each
Yeah.
other, so
Yeah.
they're
So
ugh.
like cage free is kind of like telling your kids to go play on the back porch, and pasture raised would be like
Yeah.
go out of the house and come back at the end of the day.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
This is the way I grew up.
Yeah.
It's a good analogy.
Okay. Yeah. So
for
I've
sure.
been eating a lot of cage free. Now I'm like, I'm going to look for the pasture.
Pastured is the best. It's hard.
Okay.
It's hard to find pastured meat. We sell pastured meat in the store. That's one thing that you can find grass-fed beef. Grass-fed beef and pasture-raised grass-fed beef would be the highest for beef. You can find a lot of that, and we carry that. We partner with local farms for that. But the birds, the chickens and turkeys is a little harder because it's a lot more expensive to raise them that way. Now that's the way we always used to raise birds. People used to. I think it was in 1900, 50% of Americans were farmers. So people had their own garden, they had their own chickens. They
Mhm.
were it was just part of their life. So it wasn't like they had to go to a specific grocery store to find it. It was like everybody, either you or your neighbor had whatever you needed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So here's everything you're saying. I love it, love it, love it. But it also sounds expensive, right? To eat that kind of way. Do they have programs out there for folks that are on like a tight budget to be able to afford up to some of those types of foods?
Well, one thing we're doing at the store is if you look at just organic kitchen staples like your ketchups and your mayonnaise and different things you would have in your refrigerator or your cabinetry and your pantry, we partner with a brand called Cadia, where it's all the same organic standards as every other brand, but for many other products, it's half the cost.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
we've made that a big part of our stores to offer. We'll have, the well-known Primal Kitchen ketchup, which is organic, but it has the name Primal Kitchen, so it's people will pay for that brand. But then we'll also have Cadia organic ketchup, which is really, if you look at the ingredients, it's the same exact ingredient list, and it's farmed using the same farming practices as the other one. So that was a big part
Hmm.
of what we wanted to do, is to help make things more affordable. And there is a stigma around organic being more expensive or pasture raised being more expensive, and some of that is true for sure. But like, it's also, when you think about what are we putting in our bodies on a daily basis, and how does that play a role with how we feel? It's an investment into health,
Yeah.
really.
Mhm.
It's really an investment that we make every day. And it's not that we have to do everything 100%. Like, we can do 80%. Like we eat, 3 meals a day times 7 days a week is 21 meals a week. If you could eat 15 of those pretty clean and
Sure.
organic and this
Yeah.
and that, you know what I mean? That's a really good, that's a win in my book. Like
Mhm.
perfection isn't what we want to go for because then you can go down a negative path. Now, I will say we also accept food stamps at the store too for people that are on medical assistance. We do accept that for people that have that.
That's great.
So, yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you could, and maybe it's different for everyone, but if you could say like if you just shift these one or two things in your life, it will make a big difference. Like where
Mm.
do you start and then gradually like phase into, or is it different depending on the situation or the health?
Hmm. Well, are we thinking maybe for people wanting to make a health change
Yeah,
or?
just anybody. If you're like, swap out all the condiments is like an easy swap. Just do that right off the bat and you're already saving. Or would you go for like a heavier hit, like go for the high quality meats to make a bigger
Yeah,
difference?
it depends on also depends on the health condition that they might be dealing with or what kind of, what their experience is. But a general theme could be to eat real food. There's an acronym JERF, JERF, just eat real food, to try to incorporate that when you're thinking, because there's just so much processed stuff now. And even within the processed world, there's things that are more real food. Like, you can look at a bag and see 10 or 15 ingredients, or you can see a bag of, say it's pretzels or chips or whatever, or you could see a bag that has 3 ingredients. That's even a start right there is to just simplify the amount of ingredients. If you're still eating a lot of packaged food or processed food, simplify the number of ingredients that you're seeing because,
Hmm.
I mean, even they looked at like, even in terms of fast food in other countries, they looked at the French fries in McDonald's have, in the United States, something like 8 or 9 ingredients. In Europe, it's 3. It's potatoes, salt, and oil.
Hmm.
So, just minimizing the number of ingredients is a good first step.
Hmm.
And it's not feasible for everybody, but to try to buy organic when you could. And there's certain standards, like even the fish, you would opt for wild caught when you can. Like we talked about with the beef, it's grass fed and pasture raised, and the chicken and turkey pasture raised, and the eggs. And it's not perfection. It's really just trying to do for the most part, because even changing like half your meals a week is a big shift if you haven't been
Hmm.
eating well. I look back, I used to eat. When I was a pharmacist, I worked right next to Donut Connection, so I would get a sausage, egg, and cheese bagel for breakfast. I would have a hoagie or cheesesteak for lunch, and then pizza for dinner. Like that was like a regular thing for me, right?
Nice.
So even I know it was great. I mean, it tasted great. But I think about that too. I'm like, oh man, like I was eating like that for years. Like
Yeah.
I wonder, what did that catch up to me? And I mean, some people based on their
Yeah.
genetics or their strength or their natural constitution, maybe it catches up to you when you're in your 20s. Maybe it catches up to you when you're in your 60s.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Everybody's different based upon their constitution. But I think even if I was, looking back, like even if I just cleaned up half of those meals and maybe it would have made a difference. And who knows? But I would say that's a good start
Hmm.
right there is to kind of simplify the number of ingredients if you're eating a lot of processed food. And, even avoiding seed oils is now a big thing. So, like, that's the sunflower oil, the cottonseed oil, safflower oil. Because when you heat up certain oils, like when you're frying foods, like in chips or pretzels or a lot of snack foods like that, those oils, when you eat them, then can create inflammation in the body. So that's something that we've learned that there's certain oils that are and fats that are safer and better tolerated by the body when they're heated at high temperatures. So some of these oils you could eat in like a salad dressing where it's not really going to cause too much problems, but when you heat them at really really high temperatures, like with frying, it creates inflammatory process in the body when you eat it. So that's where like avocado oil is now big, or even things like butter and ghee or coconut oil. You'll see a lot of that. One of the fastest growing chips in the store is the masa chips, and they have a sister company
I've
called
had those,
Vandy.
yeah.
Yeah, so they're fried in tallow. Now, tallow is a safer fat that when you heat it at high temperatures, it doesn't cause the same inflammation that some of the other oils will. So even things like that, like when I saw that they were available to bring them in the store, I said, "All right, we're bringing them in. We got to get these in." And then maybe we weed out, a couple other the chips that maybe aren't as clean. That's kind of how I work. I'll bring something new in
Mhm.
and then phase out something else because I still want to offer that category, whether it's tortilla chip or potato chip or whatever. I want to offer it and I want to have multiple options. But when I can, I kind of tweak it and pull those things out.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So you're not selling in bulk, though. I won't be walking out with a pallet of potato chips for $15.
No.
I love the
No,
healthier side, though.
those yeah,
I've had those chips. They're, I thought they were good. My wife didn't care for them. I like them.
The masa?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are a couple different flavors I tried.
Yeah, the masa are good. They have the sister company called Vandy, which is the potato chip company. And like even that, when you look at the back of the label, in the back of the package, it'll say chlorpyrifan free potatoes, which I had never even until I became into the industry. I never heard of that chemical.
Yeah.
What's that? So I Google it. Chlorpyrifan is a product that they spray on potatoes to prevent sprouting. And sometimes it even gets into, even like all your mainstream brands, you don't know unless they test for it, is the mainstream brand, which I'm not going to say any other brands, but if it has that chemical on there and you didn't know about it, maybe that would change whether you wanted to buy it or not. So that's why I like this transparency and this disclosure that we're seeing. Wow, okay, they're committing to not spraying anti-sprouting. So maybe that means, they're a little more expensive because they have to store them differently or turn them over faster to, maybe they have more loss in their processes because they're not using the chemicals that help you do it more efficiently. So that's why it costs a little bit more. But, for me, it's like we were talking about before, if you're making an investment in your health on a day-to-day basis, it might be worth the extra $2 or whatever it is, to spend on it.
This is fascinating. I have so many angles I want to go, but I don't know.
I just want to go right to the store.
I know. I'm starting to get hungry.
Yeah, this is great. I apologize. We kept it well over an hour here. So.
Oh my goodness.
Is there anything that we didn't mention that you wanted to make sure we did talk about, or anything that you want just the general public to know about everything natural?
I think we went into pretty good. I mean, like I said, our mission is really to elevate the health and wellness of the community, and we take it very seriously. And we're really blessed to be where we are. And I would say, if you're on your journey and you're not sure where to go and you're not sure what to, whether it's a health journey or you're struggling with trying a new diet or, it could be a variety of things. I would say come check out the store and stop by. We'd be happy to talk to you about whatever health challenge or situation you're going through. And, also offer a variety of food options, whether it's the food, the supplements, the personal care items. We have a wide variety of clean products that you can help, use for your body. And like I said, we're just very grateful to be where we're at. I love working at the store and it's been going really well. So, yeah.
You got a positive energy, man. I love it. I love why you got into this and what you're doing. What you said is fantastic. And I'm really happy for you to be on the show.
Thanks from the community.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It was great.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on.
Of course.
This is great. That's a wrap on today's episode of Beyond the Bottom Line. Thank you for listening. If this conversation sparked something for you, please let us know. Follow, share, or leave a review. It helps us keep having the conversations we love that you love to listen to. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more real talk from real leaders. Until then, here's to feeling successful beyond the bottom line.